Hey everyone,
Boom.
welcome to our live stream today. I'm Jasper Cool here with my dad, Mark Cool. Thanks for tuning in today, anyone who's joining us live. And we're going to go over our respective businesses, share our week in business, highs and lows, deal stories, stuff like that. And just feel free to drop your questions in the chat anytime. Nothing's really off limits, anything related to business, real estate, whatever you want to talk about, just drop it in the chat and we'll get to those whenever we can. Yeah, we can just dive right into it. Do you want to recap your week in business, highs and lows, and maybe some deal stories?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just trying to pull up the live so we can look at the chat.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we had a pretty good week. Well, we closed one deal, and it wasn't a big profit deal, but it was a really big win deal for us. So I can touch on that when we. I guess I'll just do KPIs and then talk more about that. But um, other than that, we got two contracts this week. They're both vacant land contracts, and we sold one this week. So that's it's a nice trend for us. If you listen to our podcast, and my business has been sort of on the ropes a little bit. We've just had like a low point and a drought. And I was looking at my annual revenue, and we're basically propped up. Jasper, we talked about this before, but our whole year is propped up by 3 months, basically.
Yeah.
I think we closed like 8 or 9 deals one month, and then we had a couple of months where we closed three or so. And then I think we had two months this year, 1 to 2 months where we closed zero deals, and then we had a bunch of months where we closed one deal. And so it's really 3 months propped up our whole year so far, and some owner finance revenue that we have from owner finance deals. But we had like a real drought from, I don't know. I wrote down. I made a note here of when we last closed these things. Let me see. So we sold one this week, and that's 3 weeks in a row that we've had sales, which is a great uptick for us. We
Yeah.
sold three in a row, 3 weeks in a row. We've had at least one sale. The prior to 8/15, which is that trend, we our last sale was July 3rd. So we had a drought
Wow.
of over a month of just selling properties.
Yeah.
It's partly the quality of the properties and partly our dispo process. And I've shared on this podcast, I let three three team members go in the last 3 months or so, and two much more recently, like a month ago or less. So that's made a big difference in things and how we're coming back. But same thing with the close. We closed one this week, and the last closing we had was July 24th, so over a month ago. And
Mhm.
so when it gets to that point, it starts to feel like, are we ever going to close a deal again? Like how
Yeah.
does that even work, right? It just feels really weird, especially for me. I have an ADD brain, so I really like abstract concepts. For me, sometimes are hard. Like, I know we have stuff in escrow. I know we're probably going to close things, but when you don't have the feeling in your body of like, we got closed this deal, I saw the money come into my bank account. It's very weird. It feels like, wow, are we ever going to? Is the business completely broken? So, uh,
Yeah.
just really blessed that we closed this deal. So that's one of the reasons that closing a deal this week was a blessing. But like I said, I'll check in more about that. But and then two contracts. We've been steadily getting contracts, but we've been really working hard on our quality of contracts, because you know we can get all the contracts in the world, but if they're not going to sell and close, I don't care. And I think our acquisitions team has been doing a really good job at really vetting the contracts of the people who want to sell to us and being like, do we want this deal? Not just being like,
Right.
yeah, let's get a contract for the numbers, but
Yeah.
really looking at, what's this going to sell for? What are the issues here? Or even, sometimes you get a seller who's just like ready to sign right away at the price you give them, like, oh shit, well, maybe we did something wrong here. if,
Yeah.
if they're just like signing, or sometimes you send somebody an offer and you've never spoken with them on the phone and they just sign it. And then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what's going on here? Things like that. So anyway, so we're on an upward trend, and it feels really good. The energy in my business feels great. Somebody asked us last week about how many people do you have on your team and stuff, and I think I've had up to 8, and right now we're at 5, and the 5 feels really strong and really energetic, and it feels like yeah, it just feels like everybody's pitching in together to get stuff done, and there's just a good momentum and energy, and that feels great. And I think it's a I'm very engaged right now, and I'm very like stepping into leadership in a different way, just really trying to support people to win and staying more connected to each person than I have been. I've been a little bit more removed, and I think that's helpful. But we also just have really great people who are self starters and what I would call A players. Just people who are show up to work every day with good energy, positivity, and have a strong work ethic and get stuff done, so
Yeah.
that just feels great. So yeah, what else was I going to say about the week in business? I made a couple notes here, but yeah, I'll tell the deal story about this deal we closed. I was just looking at the timelines from the time we contracted to sold these deals, like a few weeks on each of them. One of them was longer because we had a price reduction. But I want to talk about this deal that we closed because it's our first deal in Ohio that we closed,
That's
and
awesome.
it was a big thing that happened this week. And I think I texted with you about this a little bit as it was happening, Jasper. But we got this deal, and it's a vacant lot in Ohio, and it's not anything special. It's just a small vacant urban infill lot, and we were wondering if it was even too small to build on. But there are houses on the same size lots, so we figured it was grandfathered in. But we had a really poor response from buyers. But again, my dispo has been kind of broken, so I'm not sure that that's totally accurate. But we got this thing in June under contract, and then we sold it. Eventually, we sold it in July. So I think we sold it in 3 or 4 weeks. And the way we sold it was with a neighbor letter, which is something I've talked about on this podcast before. But it is kind of like a little known secret or a dispo strategy that has a lot of magic in it and works a lot for vacant land. We sell a lot of deals to neighbors, and the strategy is if you're not getting a lot of interest from buyers from your main sources, then you just send out letters to the neighbors and you say, hey, we got this lot next door to you or behind you or whatever. You interested? And they often call up and say, yeah, I've been wanting that lot for years. I've been trying to get that thing for. So with this one, we sold it to the neighbor. He was ready to go. He'd been wanting that lot, and he was next door, so he didn't want somebody to build on that next to him, and he wanted bigger lot. So he's ready to go. But the one sticking point was that he always does his deals through a real estate agent, and he had to work with this real estate agent that he knows and trusts. And this podcast is not about bashing real estate agents, but there are good ones and bad ones, just like there are good and bad wholesalers or other. And I shouldn't even say good and bad, but people have different standards of communication and work ethic and all those things. So this realtor got a hold of this deal and was very hard to communicate with, would disappear for days or even weeks at a time and then come back in. Was telling us that we couldn't wholesale, we couldn't assign the deal. We had to do an ABBC and that we had to pay her. We said we would pay her a commission, but a small commission on it, like just a flat fee. But anyway, she dragged her heels for weeks, and then she put us with a title company. And I don't know how much of the heel dragging was the title company or the agent, but it seemed like it was a little bit of both. And it just went on and on and on. And we put this under contract, I think early July, and then we're here mid-August, and we still are not closed. And it's just a little bit a lot, know. And so we're rattling their cages, going, what's going on? And finally, we get from there's things from the title company like, oh yeah, well, we just sent out for title, should be back in a week. And I'm like, you're the title company. Where are you sending it out to? Like, and so it was just like boggling my mind. And then we got a statement, like a preliminary quote of fees from the title company of, 4 to 6 weeks into this process. And it was absolutely ridiculous. It was like, I think we were paying $2,700 for us to do ABBC. And I would expect, high end would be $1,500 on the buy side. But then on the sell side, there's nothing you really need to do. It's like a deed prep and some taxes and stuff. So I'm not paying another settlement fee if you're doing ABBC the same day. And they had another settlement fee. They had it at like 15, or I think I had like 1,600 on the AB side, and then like another 9 or something on the BC. And then we asked them to change it, and they shuffled stuff around, and they knocked off 100 or 150, and then it's another 2 or 3 weeks, and then they go, hey, we're ready to close on Monday. Here's your settlement statement, and it's Friday at 4:30. And and it was like $2,600 in closing cost to us. And so of course I respond to them, and I'm like, we're not paying that, but it's 4:30 on Friday. And they had everybody lined up to close on Monday. So they're basically trying to strong arm us and just be like, we were thinking we're gonna feel the pressure and just sign this, and they could reach into our pockets and take all this money. And I just said no. And then they reach out. Then Monday, I said no on email because that's how they sent it to me. And then Monday, I'm waiting to hear from them. I don't hear from them until late morning Monday. And we're supposed to, like the seller and buyer closing midday or something like that. And they're like, what are you going to do? Are you going to close this? And I was like, no, I'm not going to close this. Can you do it for under 1,500? And they're like, no, we've already discounted as far as we can. I was like, okay. And I just reached out to a couple other title companies, and Jasper, you gave me one, and the rep was gone. And then I tried to reach out to a new rep, and it was like a gauntlet of talking to some person to qualify me and take all my information and then maybe push me. And I actually hung up on the receptionist, not in an
Yeah.
kind of just clicked the phone, because they were just like, it was like a sales call. They're just qualifying me, asking me questions. And then the rep said, we'll go on our website and we've got our fees calculator. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. You had to create an account and to calculate your fees. So then I reached out to another title company that we had researched previously. This woman responds to me within 5 minutes. She says, oh yeah, I can do this for you. I can close it by Thursday. It's Monday. Yeah. It's Monday morning. So like, I'll get it closed Thursday. I'm like, okay, sure. And, can you give us a quote of fees? She's like, oh yeah. And by the way, you should do this as an assignment. You don't need to do ABBC. You save a lot of money. So I'm like, okay, sure. Sounds good. And then we tell the buyer, like, we're switching title companies, and tell your agent, and the buyer and the agent were okay. And so this woman put this whole thing together, got everything done. She took care of the mobile notary and the FedEx and all that stuff, gave us our settlement statement. We ended up paying just the $500 we promised to pay the agent, and then some taxes. So we made an additional $1,700 on this deal by moving over to this person. And she closed it on Thursday by noon on Thursday within 3 days. Awesome. Yeah. So that's the victory. And, the moral of the story is shop around. Don't let attorneys or title companies tell you what's what. If you think it's wrong, you can switch. And even, these people are trying to strong arm us because they're like, that could have created a domino effect. We could have pissed off the buyer. We could have pissed off the seller. It could have screwed up the deal. But on principle, for me, I was like, there's no freaking way I'm doing that. I'm just not doing it, because you're trying to reach into my pocket. And that also, their communication and their service were terrible, So it's just awesome. An accumulation of things. But anyway, the victory is we closed our first deal in Ohio. We found an amazing title person who now I feel confident going into Ohio and closing deals, because I've got a strong title person to work with. Mm-hmm. And proof of concept for Ohio, right? And we made $1,700 more than we were going to make on that deal. And it was not a big profit deal, but it was a huge win just to make extra, just to close one and make the extra money. So
anyway. That's great. That's a great story.
That's my story. Yeah. It took some playing chicken with the title company, and they played chicken back, and they probably just are like, if we can't get at least $2,600 on a closing, we're not doing it. So like, that's fine, but that's taking way too much of the profit on a deal that's already a low profit deal for us. So we're not doing it.
As closely resembles one of our attorneys in North Carolina that you and I work with.
Yeah, it was insane. The fees were just insane. And you could see all the junk fees on there. That's just like, you can't charge me settlement fee here, settlement fee there, title work here, title work there. You can't, duplicate all these things that are already covered the first time around. They were just doing it. And so I'm just like, okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, kudos to you for shopping around and making yourself a bunch more money. That's awesome.
Yeah. Huge win. So, and like I said, now we're confident to go into Ohio, because we do have that proof of concept and we have a great title person. So shout out to Holly. It's PM Title is the company, and she was just great. She just rocked it. So we told her we're bringing all our deals to her going forward in Ohio.
That's great. Well, anyone who's listening, Holly PM Title, if you're going into Ohio.
Yeah, Holly Albaugh, I think is her last name. She's awesome.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
and it's exciting to hear that your business is on the upswing, selling deals every week, closing stuff.
That's great. It feels like if we were in an airplane and we were going along, then all of a sudden we took a nosedive, and we came inches from the ground, and now we're like, coming back up. That's what it felt.
Well, that's great.
But I think that there's a win in there, right? And it's just about trimming the fat and being clear about who's performing and who's not performing, and being, more aggressive about letting people go more quickly. Like, we talked about this with the operations guy on my team, but like, we did an annual review of him, and I was like, wow, all the stuff I set out for him to do a year ago, he hasn't done half of that stuff that was really important. You know,
Yeah.
he's done a lot of stuff. He's looked like he was busy, but he hasn't done stuff that's really helped me. And actually,
Yeah.
when I look at his tenure with the company and our revenue, the drop in revenue directly correlates with his tenure with the company. I'm
Oh
like,
man.
I mean, how can you actively, you know, and I'm not blaming, but it's just an interesting correlation. So
That
anyway,
is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
I'm
now
glad
the
you're
team is
moving
really
on to.
excited and happy. And I, you know, so there wasn't an energy drain there, even though there was an illusion of bringing good energy. You know, it wasn't working for whatever reason. So
Mhm.
it's just recognizing what's not working and making corrections as early as possible is
Yeah.
my lesson there. And I think that it's going to give us just a ton of momentum going forward, and it's going to allow us to be as profitable as we want to be because we have cut our expenses a lot.
Yeah.
It's just that's just pure profit when you cut expenses, right? So,
Just gonna set you up for a big Q4.
yep,
It's awesome.
yeah. Otherwise, I think that's mainly my week. You know, we did try out. We talked to James was on from Chicago last week on our live, and he talked to us about Deal Machine, and we were like, "Oh, we're both going to try that for the skip tracing." And so we did. We opened up an account and we tried it out, and we did a couple of lists in North Carolina, house lists, and sent out blasts. I think we did, you know, 3 to 5,000 per blast, and small sample size. Our response rate on that is like 4 to 6%, I think. Uh, with those lists. So that's not as good as, say, a fresh list from Direct Skip or Skipify or some of these other companies. I think where we would get, you know, closer to 10, you know, 7 to 10. I don't know. Jasper, you
Yeah.
said you get as high as 12. But anyway, it's still better than recycled list stuff. And we'll play with a little bit more. One of the cool things about that too, though, with Deal Machine, the pro package is that includes mastermind, similar to what Matt Larson does. And did you see that?
Oh, I didn't see that. No.
Yeah, so I get a message from the Deal Machine people, and it was like, hey, Eric Brewer's coming on Thursday at 3 to talk about sales. And I was like, oh, cool. So I told my team, and we all jumped on, and he did a nice he did a nice talk on sales. And they do a mastermind every week, and they have guests. So
That's
it's
cool.
similar to what Matt Larson does, but they're having rotating guests. And if they're having that caliber of guests, that's like free training for my team, and I got stuff out of it. Like Eric Brewer is, you know, a really good salesman, and he's a
Yeah.
real good business guy. And uh, I'll just briefly say the takeaways I took from it. One of the things that he said, that which was a fun distinction for me, that I liked in his sales process, is that salespeople treat complaints like they're objections, and you need to discern whether something a seller is saying is a complaint or whether it's an objection. And if you're trying to handle a complaint like it's an objection, you're not going to succeed because it's only a complaint. And so,
Yeah.
like an example he gave was like, "Oh, that price is way too low." Well, is that an objection or is it a complaint? And the
Yeah.
qualifying question is, well, I'm sorry, it's lower than you expected, but, you know, is that going to keep you from going forward with this process with us? No, it's just lower than I thought, you know, but yeah, I want to get this thing sold, right? So that's a complaint, not an objection. And he gave a
Mhm.
couple examples like that, and I thought it was really cool just thinking about it in that framework, right? And then sorting out when somebody says something, you know, just, oh, tell me more about that, instead of simply assuming it's an objection. Tell me more about that, and then maybe it's not an objection; it's just a complaint that they're having, and they're
Right.
still moving forward. So that was cool. And then the other thing that he talks about is just winning every appointment and winning every call. And the way you do that is you set up your parameters for winning differently than, like, a lot of salespeople get on the phone and they're like, if I don't get this contract, I lose this call, right? And that's only going to happen 10 or 20% of the time you're going to get the contract, right? So
Yeah.
instead, you know, have a checklist. Did I build rapport? Did I come off as professional? Did I, you know, whatever those things are. And when you hit those markers, then you win the call, right? Did I advance the conversation? Did I understand their situation? Because, you know, your sales is about understanding and compassion and having that human connection. So what parameters can you set for yourself so that when you can get off a call, you can check those boxes and say, yeah, I won that call, you know? And if you're doing those things, you're advancing it towards a closing at some point. So I thought that was a cool concept, the way he presented it. as well. So that was a surprise bonus from Deal Machine that I didn't expect.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
yeah, very cool that they're doing that. And
Great. Good takeaways too.
yeah, and the other thing that I noticed that I'll just share while we're on tools, or we can do tools later, but I'll just hit this one because it goes hand in hand with that. Is Propwire, has that gold tier. I mentioned it last time, but they do the same thing. They do a mastermind, and they have resources just like Matt has in Deal Lab. A whole library of resources. But they also are now offering 10,000 skips with their $99
Yeah.
Propwire Gold. So similar to Deal Machine, you can get 10,000 skips. Probably, who knows what the quality is, but for $100, 10,000 skips is like 0.004 per skip or something like that. So if
Yeah.
you're on a budget and you're trying to get some skip tracing and you don't want to pay full, retail for that, join the Propwire mastermind, the Propwire Gold, and you get 10,000 skips. Join Deal Machine and you get a bunch of skips, and that's a low cost way to get a lot of skip tracing to be able to sort of bootstrap your business without having to pay more of a retail skip price.
Definitely. Yeah.
Throwing that out there. Looks like we got Mason on here. Good day, gents. Hope all is well with you. Have either of you ever tried cold email for outreach? You tried cold email?
Yeah, what's up, Mason? Good to see you, man. For me, I've never done it at scale. If you're interested in doing that, Matt Larson has a course on that. So I would definitely recommend reaching out to him for that. I think they do it at scale, and it's like they kind of just treat it like SMS. So yeah, I don't do it at scale, but I do it in our drip sequences. Like we have email, every single drip has a text and an email. So it works in that sense, but we don't have emails for all of our sellers. So it's not like super effective, but I would say we get on average like 1 to 2 leads a day from those drips via email. So that's good. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I've never tried it at scale. I've just been focused this year, especially on bringing inbound channels. So I haven't experimented with like email, cold calling, a few other things that I do want to try again. But for right now, I'm focused on inbound. So that's why. But yeah, if you want to try it, I'd recommend Matt Larson's course on it for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I know he was talking about it on the mastermind a while back, that he was having some results and he had a good system with it. And it was one of the things he was pivoting to when other channels were slower for marketing. So
Yeah.
probably much lower cost than cold calling, right? And
Yeah,
SMS. You could do that
definitely.
with something like MailerLite or some other platform, just bulk email people for very little money. And
Yeah, and you
then,
can probably just have one VA doing it. You don't need a bunch of VAs like you do with cold calling or something.
yeah, and with I don't know, Mason, if you've used MailerLite, but it's nice. You can get a free account there, and they track things pretty well. They track your open rate and all that stuff, so you can get stats on how many people are viewing that and opening it, and see what's working, what's not working. I think you can split test within MailerLite too. Send out a couple different versions and see which
Yeah,
ones getting more opens or more views and responses, stuff like that.
definitely.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I haven't done it either. Same thing as Jasper, just follow-ups. And
yeah,
we
I
do
haven't
we do
heard Matt.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say I haven't heard Matt talking about it this year. I think last year was when he did like a full training on it for the Deal Lab people, and then he had like the course come out. So I'm not sure if his company is still doing it, but he did say last year they were having good results with it. So I don't know. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's the only person, Matt's the only person I've ever heard talk about doing that. So uh, yeah, I don't know
Well,
any other resources.
there are people on YouTube talking about it. I've seen it pop up,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
So
would go
yeah,
with Matt
but
because he's the OG and he knows what he's doing.
yeah. But yeah, Mason, if you do try it out, let us know how it goes for you. Maybe that'll be the next channel that I try out because I'm definitely, I like doing it on the buyer side. It's fairly simple to set up. You just get a domain name and all that stuff. And yeah, so most of our skip tracing data already has emails, so it's not something you have to pay additional for if you're already skip tracing. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another way to hit your list if you're spending that money on lists. You've got 3 different ways you can maximize your spend on the list. You can do text, direct mail, well, 4 ways: cold calling, then email. You can
Yeah.
hit the list from 4 different directions or probably more, and then you're maximizing your dollars, your skip trace spend, your list spend.
Oh, you know what, Mason? I forgot. I'm sorry. There's another dude that does that actually. try to find their name. Maybe I could drop in the chat here. There's another guy that has an email course. I don't know how in depth it is, but he has an email course for free on his school community. So see if I can find that real quick. Trying to take too long. But I think it's Zach Ginn. Yeah. Wholesaling real estate. Yeah.
Oh,
Zach,
they do land too. Those guys do land.
yeah, Zach Ginn, wholesaling real estate. He's got a course in their school group. Yeah, email offer generator. It's free. So I will drop the link right now in the chat for his school community if you want to check that out, because that one's totally free. So I don't know how in depth that is compared to Matt Larson's thing, but oh, he says, I've been doing it for a week or so now using instantly. So far, 1 to 2% response rate with 300 emails sent so far, which isn't bad at all. Yeah, that's great. Okay. He says Zach Gain has good stuff. Yeah, so you've probably already seen it, but that's one thing I just thought about. He has a free one, so it sounds like you're already doing it. But if you want to go more in depth, yeah, Matt Larson might be a good person to check out.
Yeah, he goes deep on stuff like that. He really researches things and gets them dialed, sets
Yeah,
up systems.
definitely. So yeah, well, I guess we'll switch over to me then if you want. Just to echo what you said though about the deal machine thing, because we wanted to check back in about that. I don't know if James is on here today or not, but either way, we both did try it out, and I kind of agree with you. I was gonna say kind of the same exact thing, so I won't make it too long, but I kind of agree with you that Propwire is kind of better in my opinion if you're just like looking for a data source. I didn't know about what you just mentioned with the mastermind aspect, so that sounds awesome. But in terms of just looking for like a data platform, I personally like Propwire better. So I'll probably be using them and as far as data, but I might sign up just for the mastermind part for Deal Machine. So, uh, but yeah.
You're talking about Propwire for list pulling?
Yeah, for list pulling, because I pull lists with them, every month, and they get good response rate, with their data, and it's free. So, so yeah, I like Propwire, and Deal Machine. I really like their software. Like it's really clean the way it looks, and it's very easy to use. But I just noticed the numbers that I was getting were kind of incorrect as opposed to like direct skip and stuff like that. So yeah, but I haven't tried Propwire for skip tracing, so I can't really speak on that. Maybe I'll try their gold thing and then do that. But in terms of buying lists, or not buying, but downloading lists from Propwire, they work well for us. So just wanted to share that. We mentioned them before, but if anyone's just getting started, it's a good source because it's free to download their list. You can do up to 10,000 downloads per day, and then it resets every day. So that's nice.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll switch over to my week. I had a huge win this week that I don't think I've ever had, or maybe not this year. But I had a memo release fee this week. So that's
Wow.
amazing. Right. So I think that increases my percentage to like 5% maybe if I, if I had to account for all the memorandums we filed. But hey, a win's a win. So we had one of those. So I guess that kind of counts as like a closing. And then we closed two, regular deals this week. And then we had one sold and three contracts. So that was our numbers for the week. And really exciting because two of those contracts came from my new guy. His name is Eduardo, and he's just crushing it. So I'm really happy for him. Really feel just blessed to have him on board. And he's just, like I said, he's crushing it. And so he got one of those contracts yesterday on Saturday, which is awesome. And then the other one he has been like following up with all week. But really, it came in, I think, on Tuesday, and we got the contract signed on Wednesday or on Friday. And it was an online lead, so she was like ready to go, but she definitely had some objections and stuff. So he was working on it. And then we just had Duncan, our friend, go out there and get the contract signed on Friday because she couldn't figure out the doggy sign. So we were just like, okay, we'll just have Duncan go out there. But yeah, so that was a victory. And then the other contract that he got was also an online lead. So it just continues to be a victory for us to keep getting these contracts from online leads. I think last week, all four of our contracts were from online leads. So
Wow.
it's really just starting to pick up for us, which is great. So that's exciting. But I did share last week that we got one under contract from an online lead, and the roof was literally off the house. And so I wasn't expecting that. But we had to get a reduction this week. And thankfully we did. And then we sold it the next day. So that was a win. So we were able to salvage that online lead and still make a
Sold a
profit.
house with no roof?
Yeah. Fire damage with no roof. I should send you a picture of it. I posted on Facebook, but it's really funny. really fun.
What did you get it under contract for? Like $10,000?
We should have, but yeah, we offered 30,000 because they told us it was fire damage, right? And so I was like, okay, it's fire damage, but hopefully, it can still be salvaged. We obviously didn't see the property, and so we got under contract for 30, and then we went out and saw the property, and the roof's off the house. It was like, you're not gonna be able to save this house, and so it's gonna need to be torn down. So we're just like, okay, so we tried to get it for a lower price on reduction, 15K, because we had a buyer solid at 25. And long story short, we got it at 19. So we were just making 6,000 on it. But I just wanted to make some profit from an online lead, because those leads are very expensive. But yeah, so we were able to sell it for 25, even in the current state, which was kind of a shocker for me. All of our other offers, which I've shared this before, but all of our other offers were literally 5,000 to 8,000. Those were other offers. And we had one buyer who offered us 35. He ended up just kind of being like a tire kicker, and I couldn't even get a hold of him. And so it's really interesting when people do that, when they go through the trouble to submit an offer on my website and then they don't answer the phone ever. That's just like, why would you even do that? Like, just no.
We had a few of those this week too, where people are like, yeah, I'll give you 29.9 for it. Okay, great. And then they never pick up the phone.
It's just so weird. Like, just don't make an offer. But anyway, so we had one of those, and I was super excited off of that. But thankfully, like I've shared before, when you're going with a price reduction, I always go with the lower offer, right? Because if we went for a price reduction based on 35, we wouldn't even need it. We could have just sold it to him, but he never answered the phone. And so we sold it to a lower offer. And this guy seems to be like a big developer in this area. This was in Hickory, North Carolina. So I don't have that many buyers out there. But I found this dude on Investor Base, and yeah, he seems like a good buyer. So we're hoping to close this week, because it's just like you said, it's just like pretty much a vacant land at this point. And so they should be able to close it that fast. So we're hoping to close that one on Friday. So we'll see. But yeah, so that was a win for this week, to be able to salvage that deal and have them come back around. And then we closed two this week. I'll just share a story from one that was really, really difficult. So we got this one deal. It was not an online lead. This is an SMS lead. And let me just get the dates on it. So this lead came in May of this year, and it was from a text campaign that we launched January of this year. And it was from which again, a lot of our deals this year, I have to look and see exactly how many, but a lot of our deals come from this neighborhood list that we do. So I have a YouTube video on that. If anyone's interested, you can check it out. But basically, we just draw a circle around areas that we close deals in, and we pull all that data in that circle. And it's not like a science to it. We just kind of draw a big circle. So I would say it's anywhere from 1 to 3 miles around whatever deal we just closed. And then we just pull all the data. We don't use any filters on this specific list. We just pull all the surrounding properties. And so this was from that list. And like I said, we've probably closed 2 or 3 every single month from that strategy. So it's really awesome. And I just use Propwire for that. So it's pretty much free, except for skip tracing. And so anyways, this deal came from that list, which is awesome. So in January, we closed a deal nearby. We pulled the whole list, and then, we text blasted it. And then this lead came in May. And we were following up with them for a little while, and then we got it under contract in August. So it took about 2.5 months of follow-up. Then we got under contract, and then I was really bummed because right after we got under contract, we already got pictures beforehand in this case. And so I was like, awesome. As soon as we got the contract, I got working on, marketing it for buyers. And then immediately New Western, reaches out to me. He's like, hey man, like we just canceled this property. Like you're going to need it at 65. I was like, man. I was like so excited, when you get a deal.
Wait, they just canceled. New Western had it and they canceled it?
Yeah. And so I was like, oh man. So I was just like so bummed because it's
what
like
what are they saying that you need?
They were like, we would pay 65 for this, and we just got under contract for 96. So like, awesome. And so, it's like we put all this work in to get a contract. I'm super excited. We already got pictures, they're ready to close fast, all this stuff. And so I was so excited, and then I just get like punched in the chest. And so I was like, okay. And I was literally just gonna reach out to my team. I was like, let's just cancel it right away, not waste their time, and just like try to go for a reduction to 50 or 55. And if not, we'll just cancel it. But I was like, I'll at least give it a day or two, try to work on it. And thankfully we found a buyer. And so we found a buyer at 102.
Wow.
And whatever that delta is, like $50,000 higher than New Western, or $40,000 higher than New Western. And so that was a shock to me. I didn't have any other offers besides those two. There was literally my only 2 offers. And so I was like, okay, we'll do it. And I didn't know if it was going to be another one of those situations, like a fake buyer who's just offering too high. He doesn't know what he's doing. But no, this guy was legit. And his strategy is Airbnb. So he can pay a little bit more than other buyers. In this case, a lot more than other buyers. And so it worked out perfectly for us. And so, but then the problems kind of started from there on out. So we sold it to this dude, and he was like, "I'll close it, but I have to close with my attorney in Rocky Mount. This property was in Rocky Mount." I was like, "Okay, who's your attorney?" And it was this tiny, tiny attorney. Like if you've ever worked with Bill Browning and Durham, kind of similar. Like there's one secretary and one attorney, and that's it. And they
That's like Chester and Parker. Yeah.
yeah. And so like, okay. And so I call them, they don't pick up, I had to call them like 5 times. I'm just trying to see if they have like, if they deal with assignments. And so myself and Giselle, we were calling them. Anyways, finally got a hold of them, and they're like, yeah, no, we don't do assignments. So I was like, okay, awesome. So we reach out to the buyer. We're like, hey man, like they don't do assignments. So can we just close with our attorney? He's like, okay. And so we send it over to our attorney. In this case, starts with an HM are the initials. I won't put them out there, but we send it over to those guys. And so we get started on it, and they're like, we're not going to close this deal for you. And I was like, excuse me? And they're like, we're not going to close this deal for you. Like, it's too complicated. There was a bunch of, stuff going on, but they were like, we're just not going to close it for you. Basically, there were 2 owners on this property, and one of them was petitioning to get the other owner off the title, basically doing a quiet title suit. And they're like, we just don't want to deal with this. Like, we'll close it for you guys after the petition, but we're not going to deal with it right now with this active petition going on. And we told her, like, I didn't, but Giselle was like, look, I've talked to both the sellers. She's going to dismiss this petition. They just want to close the property. Like, you guys really can't help us. And they're like, no. And I was like, okay.
Wow. If she already said she was going to dismiss it, they could get an affidavit that says she's going to dismiss it and move forward.
Yeah. And she was happy to sign that and all that stuff. And I was really confused because I've just rarely had that happen before. Like, we already had the title search started, all this stuff. And they were just like, yeah, no, like, it's too complex. We're not going to deal with it. I was like, okay. And so they were like, we recommend these other people. And it was funny because one of them is like the attorney that we just stopped working with. And so we're like, okay, we'll give them another shot. And so we sent it over to this old attorney that we used to close a bunch of our deals with. And they took it. They were like, yeah, we can help you with this, and we can close on this date. And I was like, awesome.
Is that an attorney that begins with S?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we might be switching more deals back to them. They really gave us great service on this one, which is like back to the old days. They just had a really low point where they were giving terrible service. And so anyways, they gave us great service on this deal. And, obviously we closed it this week, but the next challenge was, so now we're on our third attorney for this deal. The next challenge was the buyer's going out of the country on the 22nd of August. And so we're really just running and gunning, trying to close them on the 22nd. And at this point, we probably sent it to them like 10 days prior, 7 to 10 days prior, because we had to switch attorneys again. And so they were like, yeah, we'll do everything we can to get it closed on time, all this stuff. And so then we ran into the next challenge. And one of the sellers has like a bunch of liens against him. And then the other seller has 3 payoffs. She has a primary mortgage, she has a second mortgage, and then she has a HELOC. She has 3 payoffs that we got to get. Wow. and so both of these sellers, it's like, have so much going on. They're ex-spouses, and so they're never going to talk to each other. So Giselle's just being the go-between here, and they're like, don't tell this person that we're doing this, don't tell this person, and it's just like crazy. And so then one of the sellers, he needs help finding a new place to move, so we set up a search for him. He wants to move to Knightdale, North Carolina, and so we set up a search for him, sent him a bunch of options, and he actually found one. So he went with one of our options.
They're both living in the same house, even though they're separated?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's rough.
And so it's very rough. I mean, they're kind of like the lady was in between like her new house and this house, but she's having to like move her stuff out. And then he's trying to move to Knightdale as far away from her as possible, whatever. And so anyways, he finds his apartment, thankfully. And he was like, well, I need help moving. And we're like, okay. But because of all these title issues, like sometimes we'll offer sellers, we'll pay for your move up front, all this stuff. We're like, because of all these title issues, I told Giselle, I was like, how about we give them $500 as a bonus after we close? Like I don't feel comfortable sending it to him right now, but after we close, we'll do that and be like, hey, like we're reimbursing you, So we agreed to do that for him. And because of that, he was like working gung ho trying to help us. So that was awesome. And then so the other lady, she's very nice and she was very helpful, thankfully, or else we wouldn't be able to get this done. But long story short, the buyer's going out of country on the 22nd. And so he didn't feel comfortable wiring because he's never worked with our attorney before. So he's like, I want to drop off a cashier's check. We're like, okay. But they didn't have the payoffs in time, because there's 3 different payoffs. So we had 2 and we were just waiting on the last one, of course. And so they were like, we have the HUD kind of ready, but we don't know exactly what the numbers are going to be because we don't have title insurance yet because we don't have the 3rd payoff, right? And so they were like, your buyer can bring this check in, but he needs to bring $1,000 above what the current amount is just in case, and then we can refund him the difference.
That's so great. Like, okay. He's already suspicious, right?
Yeah. And so
$1,000.
Yeah.
He'll be okay.
And thankfully he was fine with it, and so he did that. But we explained to him because we don't know when this payoff's going to come in. We're trying to get as fast as possible, but basically we just need an extra cushion, and they'll refund you the difference. And so okay, and so he did that. So he dropped the check off before he left the country, and he did that on the Friday, the 22nd. And then this week we're hoping to close on Monday. Payoff doesn't come. We're hoping to close on Tuesday. Payoff doesn't come. Payoff finally comes on Wednesday. And thankfully the seller is still getting paid. Like we've had so many deals lately where we've had the payoff come in, and it's like way higher, and we have to cancel the deal. Anyways, thankfully that wasn't the case on this one. And so sellers were good, and they signed and everything. And then the last hurdle here, it was like the attorney does their final title search before we're going to close. I hate when they do they do a search like the day before closing. They're like, oh, just in case anything else has come up, and it's like whatever. Anyways. And so then they're like, oh, the taxes just came in. I was like, oh, awesome. And so they're like, yeah, so we're going to need to add an additional, for the taxes onto the HUD. So the buyer's going to need to wire an additional, I don't remember what it was, like $1,500 or something. They're like, the buyer's going to need to wire an additional amount. Yeah, it was higher than 1,000. And so they're like, the buyer's going to need to wire this additional amount. And we're like, well, the buyer's out of country right now. Like, I know the taxes aren't due till January anyways. Can we just leave these off the HUD? And thankfully they're like, yeah, we can do that, but we need an email from the buyer stating that. And we're just like, oh my gosh. So anyways, the buyer did that, and we ended up closing early Friday morning. So we just finally closed a week after we were aiming for, but we got close. And we sent the other seller $500. The original, lady seller with the 3 payoffs was super happy, and we closed the deal. And not only that, but we had our first 3 reviews on one deal ever. We got all 3 5-star reviews from both sellers and the buyer. So
wow, that's great.
Yeah,
you guys are crushing it with the reviews.
Yeah, so it was worth it in the end. Obviously we made a profit on the deal. We got 3 5-star reviews. The buyer was happy. Both the sellers were super happy. So it all came together. But I was talking to Giselle. That's probably our most difficult deal this year for sure. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. But yeah, we got it done.
That's amazing.
So yeah, thank you.
Did you make any money on it?
Yeah, we ended up making more than we thought. So we ended up making 12,000 on the deal. So yeah, it was a big win for us in that sense. And also we had the buyer send us the earnest money deposit because, like I said, I wasn't sure if this was like a legitimate buyer, and he sent us the earnest money directly because we were like switching attorneys all around. And so that was an additional kind of protection we had for ourselves, just to make sure he closed. But yeah, so it worked out. And I think next time he'll be fine closing with our attorney, and hopefully we can find him some more deals. So it was awesome.
And maybe you found a new attorney.
Yeah, I think we're switching back to the old attorney. Yeah, it's like musical chairs with these attorneys in North Carolina. It's so funny.
Yeah, what I found with one of the attorneys that we work with is I just called it out. I was just like, hey, is something happening in your office? Because it seems like your service is slowed down and we're not getting the same response times and stuff. And I was like, oh, thanks for telling me that. And then it changed after we talked to him. So
that's great.
Yeah, you can do that. But yeah, I know that you've had good experience with those guys in the past. So
yeah, we've had a great experience with them for months, and then it just went downhill. And we tried to ask them about it, in a nice way. And they were just like, we're just swamped with closings right now. And we're like, okay, well, you're not going to kind of give us a little bit of priority. We're just going to move on. But now we're coming back. So see. But yeah, we also, thanks for reminding me, we had a huge milestone this week. So I guess I could share that as a win, but we reached 100 5-star reviews this week. So that's amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we got to take a page from your book because we've been very slow with our reviews, and we got to get more reviews. We get them, but not at the rate you guys have been getting. You've been really making it a solid priority in getting them. And I think more and more people are just, Googling us every time we call them, and they need to see those reviews.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
100. Yeah, that's amazing. It's all thanks to my team, but I give them a bonus every time I get a review. So obviously they're incentivized. And I think that really helps us get more reviews. But also, since Giselle joined my team, it's just been like a rocket ship with the reviews. We just get so many reviews. So I'm just really grateful for her. Because I don't even talk to sellers or buyers a lot of times. It's really just them. So
yeah.
So it's thanks to the team for sure. But yeah,
How much,
next
how
up,
much of a
200.
bonus to pay for review? Do you mind my asking? Or maybe proprietary information. That's okay. You can tell me offline.
Yeah, I'll text you just because, like, I don't know if I should put their business out there,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Maybe it's not a good thing to do.
but yeah, no, it's nothing major. I just send them a small bonus every time. But it adds up. Like this week, Giselle tied her own record. We got 6 reviews, so that adds
Yeah.
up over time. So
Talk about the memorandum because you said you had a memorandum release, and we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, and I think it's different in different states, but we haven't had much luck about it, either of us.
yeah,
We both filed dozens of memorandums, and I've made I think I got one guy to pay me $500 to release a memorandum or something like that, and
yeah.
that's the only success I've ever had with it. And then I've had a couple of people call me and ask me about it, but then not call me again. So I think they eventually went
They
around.
just they just close around you. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did this one work for you? Talk more about that.
Yeah, so I've had this year in particular. I should start tracking it as like a KPI, but I've had a lot of people reach out to me this year about memorandums. And so I don't know if maybe North Carolina has changed their policy, like you need to contact the memorandum holder. I don't know because they're still closing around me constantly, but I've had a lot of people contacting me. And so then once I reply, then they just ghost me and they probably close around me, but they're contacting me. So at least like that's a good sign. Last year I had, I think just one, maybe two. I think it was just one. I can remember one where I got paid $1,000. So similar to you, like it's not a huge win, but it was something. And in total, I don't know the total amount, but I probably filed over the years around 100, in total.
Mhm.
If I had
Yeah.
to guess, like, over the years. And so, yeah, I think I could count on one hand. It's been five or less that I've gotten paid off of out of 100. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, this one. So they reached out to me, and this was a deal that we filed a memorandum because we were trying to close a deal, and the seller just ghosted us. And so we were scheduled to close this one late last year, and then he just completely ghosted us. And so we filed the memo, and then turns out he put it on the market. And so they called me up. I think I don't remember if he reached out to me first or if it was a closing attorney, but either way, one of them reached out to me, and I was like, yeah, we'd be happy to release this, but we need a fee for it because I just shared the story. We already had the deal scheduled to close. We were expecting to profit this amount, so I'll do this amount. I just discounted my fee by 50%. I was like, I'll do it for this amount. And they were like, okay, we'll have the seller give you a call. I was like, okay. So a seller called me, and I just told him basically the same thing. And he was like, yeah, no, I can't do that. And like, how about $2,500 or something? And I was like, no. And so I was like, I could do this amount, just sleep on it, call me back or whatever. And so he did. And I kind of slept on it too. And I was like, well, I'll just take a lesser amount anyways. And so next time he called me back, we settled on $4,500, and that's what we got paid at closing. So that was it.
That's great. That's a huge win. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what do you think was different on this one than all the ones where people close around us that this guy felt like he had to pay you? Was it just the attorney that he was working with and they didn't want to do it, or what do you think was different?
Yeah, I think it was just the attorney, just had some sort of ethics. So I really appreciate that attorney.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they just actually cared. And I mean, I sent them a decently long email. Like I was like, we don't just do this for no reason. This is the exact thing that happened on this deal. The seller just completely ghosted us. We had a closing date scheduled. I just gave them the facts, and I showed them our contract, which clearly states we can file a memorandum, all that stuff. And so I think the attorney was just like, okay, this guy's not an idiot. Like he's actually trying to do business the right way. So
Yeah.
yeah. But in most cases, the attorneys just reach out to me and then I never hear back. So just like you. I actually have another one right now who reached back out to me this week because same thing. They reached out to me and I was like, I'll do it for this amount. And then they ghosted me. And then they just reached out like a month later and they're like, would you do it for this amount? And I was like, no, but I'll do it for this amount. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see if we get another one. But I do know, just for anyone listening, there's been a lot more like news and stuff around memorandums, and just similar to like everyone trying to ban wholesaling. Texas has already banned memorandums, and I think that's coming nationwide. So, that's why I kind of lessened my stance on them in terms of like trying to negotiate hard. Like I'll probably just take 3 to 5 thousand if I can, and then I'll just move on because I think very soon they're just gonna not care at all. So yeah.
Yeah. And I'd be curious if you are listening, like what's it like in your state if you have filed memorandums? Are you getting a higher success rate than we have in North Carolina? Because I haven't filed as many as you, Jasper, but I've filed dozens of them, and I've had one of them pay me money.
Yeah.
And it wasn't much money.
Yeah.
But then I've had maybe 3 or 4 people reach out to me about them out of dozens, out of, probably 40 or 50 I've filed, I would guess, maybe 40.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then one paid me and 3 or 4 reached out to me, but then I didn't hear back from them again. So
Yeah.
just interesting to see. But if anybody has any experience with it, let us share it with us. And if you're in the chat, I see there's a couple people in the chat, drop in where you're listening from, or any questions or comments you have. We're happy to answer any questions or comments, or talk about any topics you want to talk about. We got another 10 minutes or so on this live before we wrap it up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'm interested to hear anyone who's live here or anyone who listens back, if you guys have success with memorandums in your state, and I guess maybe drop the state if you do. Just curious about that, how different states treat them. But yeah, I mean, even if not, I think it's still kind of worth the risk, because it only costs like $30 to file one. So it's kind of like, just, I think of it like buying like a penny stock, right? There's like a 90% chance it goes to zero, but there's a 1% chance or 10% chance that you get paid from it, so that's why we continue to do it. But yeah.
I'm just looking on the community tab. I don't see anything in here that we need to address. I think we've hit everything on here.
Oh yeah, do we have any questions from last week?
No. Yeah, no, I think we've hit everything in the community tab. I remember that Gorgeous asked last week at the very end about sub 2, had a question about how do you get the seller to feel comfortable with the loan staying in place. And I think we don't do a lot of sub 2 on here, so we'll keep that brief, but it was a question that came in. For me, I think it's just having the seller understand it and explaining to them, how it works, and that we will be on the hook for it. The other good thing that you can tell the seller in their favor is, if we were to default, they can take the property back. You have an attorney who is the arbiter of the whole thing. So they, if I was to default, the attorney would support the seller to take the property back, in their name. So they have that. And then another objection that sellers have is, about what if I want to get another loan? But you can knock off, I think the first year you can only 30% of it counts to your debt to income ratio. And then after 1 year, you can write a letter to a lender and say, we've taken responsibility for this loan, and show them a history of payments that you've made. And then it all comes off of the debt to income ratio of the seller, so they can get another loan. So that's another objection I've seen them have. But you have to present it with confidence and clarity. And I do have, if you're curious about sub 2, I have a couple documents I've created about, I think I have a document on how to present sub 2 to a seller and how to explain it to a buyer. And, we have that in our system here. I can share that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to touch on that one, because I was asked like right at the wire last week, and we kind of cut off the conversation. But yeah, I don't know what else we have here. We could do inspiration and education. Anything you're reading or listening to or watching?
Yeah, this week I've been reading, I actually just finished listening to Alex Hormozi's new book, so that was really good. I'm still kind of trying to rack my brain around how I can apply that to the wholesaling business in particular. So yeah, I'm definitely thinking about that. But I've been reading that, and then I've got his two. He's got a closer handbook and the advertising handbook. I got those physical copies, so I'm gonna be looking into those this week. I've just been studying for the real estate thing, so I haven't been doing as much reading. But yeah, so I did that, and then I started listening to Buy Back Your Time. I've read that, but I haven't listened to it, so I think it's a good thing for me to listen to right now as I'm thinking about hiring more people. So
yeah, that's a good idea to listen to it as well. I read that paper in the paper version, but I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, so that's what I'm reading right now. But what about you?
Yeah, I'm still on Raise Your Game. I'm almost done with that, and then I had a drive to the beach. I was actually listening to a lot of Gary Vee this past, on this drive, and also Diary of a CEO. I shared that one with you, Jasper, with Alex Hormozi in a panel talking about entrepreneurship, which was really good. And Gary Vee is just, he's talking a lot about these days. His message is always just post massively and get your brand out there, because he's saying that the best resume or the best funnel actually this is a really cool concept that he was sharing. And one of the things I was watching is somebody reached out to him and asked about, creating the best funnel. And he was like, well, I could tell you how to create a funnel, but there are people who do that better than I do. So I would just go to some guru and find out how to create a funnel. But what I want to say is the best funnel you can have is to have a social media presence,
Yeah.
because you're building trust and you're getting referrals and you're getting more and more people knowing who you are, and that's your funnel. So do that. Go post. His message is always post 3 or 4 times a day on 7 platforms a day, which is insane, but that's what he says everybody should be doing. So, and he also was talking about AI and how it's completely changing the game, and it will change the game. Like a year from now, we could tell AI that we want to do a podcast and we want to talk about these things and we want to be wearing these clothes and we want to be having these facial expressions, and AI will just make this thing for us, like as a podcast. So it's really he's saying that AI is going to change the game the way the internet changed the game when the internet really got big. So still coming. So it's good to educate yourself on it. And we've been using it in our businesses, and we talk about it some about how we're using it in our real estate investing businesses, but there are so many applications and it's just going to get more and more. So if you're not educating yourself about AI, then I think you should be, in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, that's I love Gary Vee too. He's just fun and engaging and genuine. He's got a big heart and he's really smart about marketing. So I've just been sort of reconnecting with his material lately.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, and it's funny you said that. One of the guys I follow ran a split test where he did like an AI clone of himself. They can do it just like you said, like it looks just like you. And he did a few videos and it got like 5x the views of his real human, videos of him talking. And I was like, wow. So it's here.
We're all going to have that. We're going to have a 3D, AI generated avatar that we just, you just type in or talk in, like, this is what I want my next video to be. And it's going to be created.
Yeah.
And I want a purple baseball cap on, and a unicorn next to me, and it'll be there. Just whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's super exciting. But yeah, I guess we can wrap it up there unless anyone has any last minute questions. Mason, I think you're the only one who joined us live today, but that's all good. I appreciate you for tuning in and hope you have a great week. And anyone else will be live next week, same time at noon. So feel free to tune in and ask your questions.
Yep. Have a great week, everyone. And see you next time.